This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
Hello and welcome to The Shift, the podcast that aims to tell the no-holds-barred truth about being a woman post-40. Created and hosted by me, writer and broadcaster Sam Baker. My guest today is a Gen X legend and someone I've been a little bit obsessed with ever since I saw her star in the definitive 80s movie Say Anything, Ione Skye. There was a time when it seemed like if there was a hot young actor, John Cusack, River Phoenix, Keanu Reeves, Ione got to snog them on screen. I know, shallow much. Ione has spent her life in the centre of the Venn diagram of film, music and celebrity. The daughter of 60s superstar Donovan, she famously dated Red Hot Chili Peppers' Anthony Kiedis when she was just 16 and had an ill-fated marriage to Beastie Boy Adam Horowitz.
Had I had something else like occupying me, even though it was the most negative, difficult few years of my life for my little psyche, I'm happy that I know Anthony and Flea and that scene, but I wish it had been 10 years later and I never dated Anthony. I'm glad I know them, but it was just that scenario. But I think I didn't understand that this interaction, it was one of those things, even though it was negative, it was something I was attached to because it was like, a big thing that I was involved in.
But there's so much more to Ione than all those male name drops. She's starred in some of the most significant movies of their generation. She's worked with the likes of Sofia Coppola, Chloe Sevigny, Lena Dunham, and Madonna. She's written children's books, directed short films, and is an accomplished painter. Oh, and I do just have to say that as a child, she only lived next door to the iconic writer Eve Babitz. Anyway, it all adds up to one fascinating, tumultuous story. One she's addressed candidly in her new memoir, Say Everything. See what she did there? Ione joined me from LA to talk about growing up in the 80s and 90s, being a Nepo baby before Nepo babies were a thing, having it all, losing it all, and then getting some of it back. What she's learnt from her daughters, and finally coming into herself in her 50s. Well, it's so great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on The Shift.
Thank you for having me.
I have just spent a few days in the 90s, kind of with you, but not with you, if you know what I mean. How was it revisiting all of that?
I'm someone who was very nostalgic and so often thought about all those times over and over and over, but writing about it at this point in my life, it felt really good to write about it from a kind of objective and calm place instead of just having all of those stories and things just kind of, banging around in my head. So I think it was kind of more than painful. Of course, some parts were really painful. I felt sad for myself when I was a very little kid and when I was a teenager. And of course, in my divorce, I felt sad for myself, but I liked the opportunity to kind of use it really as therapy, which I expected it would be therapeutic because of course it would be therapeutic. I mean, not of course, but that's what you hear. Some of my friends who wrote memoirs said, of course, it's therapeutic and you don't know until you get there. And then it did end up helping me understand what happened and, give myself forgiveness and all of the kind of cliche things that you hope will happen. So I had that experience.
What made you decide to do it now?
There seemed to be some interest in my story. There was a TikTok where people were asking about Anthony, and some people were it just was happening a bit often and in the short period of time of people saying, oh, I love your story. All of those things that quite a few people, are told. But this time, at this point, I really started feeling like I had the confidence to do it. I felt kind of mature enough to do it. And really I felt more confident than I would have like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I would not have wanted to do it. I've always been a little fascinated with myself and my stories, maybe because I used to write stories. And so I fancied myself not a short story writer. I never finished a short story even, but I think I thought I was, like I'm a good writer. But then there was the whole process of this is not a poem. This is not a short story. This is a whole other thing, which is a memoir. And then I had to really learn how to write a memoir. So a combination of just wanting to tell my story about Anthony and my father and just my fun life. It felt really kind of exciting. And I really, really wanted people to get to know me because I'm kind of shy. I'm sort of hard to get to know. People are confused by my career. So I really felt like I just want people to understand what's going on in my head.
How did you, when you were approaching it, because your daughters are now mid-teens and mid-20s?
Yes.
Were you kind of tempted to, pull the punches, maybe not be quite as candid as you might otherwise be? Or were you just like, I'm going to lay it all out there and this is me, take it or leave it?
Yeah, I was hesitant about the things that you would expect. If when you read the book, there's parts that you would imagine kind of taboo or, sex and drugs kind of territory. So I was hesitant and I thought about them. I thought about, do I really want to say this? That I had an abortion. Do I really want to talk about experimenting with drugs? Yeah. And just some of this bisexual stuff. I mean, my kids are 15 and 24, so they know a lot, but they don't know everything and every detail. And they both haven't read the book, although I said, if you want to, we can talk, especially my younger one. I was hoping she wouldn't read it yet because she's 15, but for some reason, they find it just squirmy to watch me in movies anyway. But I would have talked to them about it, and they do know most of my things. But yeah, some of the details I just sat with for a long time and thought about and talked to my husband about and really just, thought about this. Do I want to? And a friend of mine that I trusted. And, I just had to sit with some of it until I felt like, yes, I think this is good to write about. Good in the sense that it felt good to me to get it out there. And it didn't feel like it was going to hurt anybody. And I felt I could stand behind myself, that if I did things that were wrong or hurtful to myself or others, it was something that I ended up learning about.
There's a few times through the book you talk about, you're kind of not feeling like you're allowed to take up space and that your opinion doesn't count. And, which I totally get. When did that start to change for you?
When I became conscious of it, I think it was when I was young. I was just sort of in the moment, seeing my older brother, felt like all his teachers responded to him in a sort of different way, but he also was an outgoing, very good student. So that was probably because he was actually doing really well in school and I didn't. But I think I didn't really notice it consciously because as a little girl, I was just playing the role of the good girl and whatever need I wanted, felt grown-ups wanted me to be like, and you get a nice response for being affectionate or smiling or whatever, and you just sort of go with it. And then when I was older, I think, yeah, learning about feminism or just hearing people talk about, oh, women don't get paid as much as men. And then I started to think, the older I get, the more I see how different the world is to women. And it makes me so angry. I was just kind of out of it when I was younger and growing up in LA and being in the Western world or whatever. I guess I thought, not that I thought it was equal, but I wasn't really paying attention to just how heavy the difference can be. And then I felt like, well, where am I in this? What am I going to do about this? So I started, there's something pretty interesting that happened. I was doing a TV show in England, and it was a medieval show. So I noticed these women came on set with bustiers, and all their costumes started becoming sexier and sexier. And the male crew were like, oh, like getting so like.
Was this in the 90s?
This is in the 90s. It was this show called Covington Cross. So yes, it was in the 90s. And this actress who I wish I could remember her name. She was amazing. I think she'd been married to Peter O'Toole, like a genius Royal Shakespeare Company actress. And I was very frustrated because women weren't treated the same well or whatever. And she said, you'll get respect when you get older. That's when because I felt like I wasn't getting respect. I thought, okay, I've got to wait. And that has happened. But now I'm seeing very slowly, and I'm so happy about it, that I hope women don't have to wait to be older. Like little girls should have respect and be treated properly, and teenagers and young adults. And so I do see a little bit of change having daughters myself and just looking at the world and TikTokers and everything like that. But I just remember thinking back then, okay, I gotta wait 2 decades and then maybe I'll be treated, kind of taken seriously.
Or maybe you'll just be cast off into invisibility because you're now old.
That's right. That can happen as well. And that's terrifying.
As a kind of, you say, and I really identified with this, I'm slightly older than you. Basically, it was great being a Gen X kid, but it's taken me half a lifetime. And the example of my daughters to stand up for myself and say, and speak up in those times when it would be easier and more convenient not to. And I think that was so my experience of the work world, of the whole world, actually, because you just weren't, you kind of, I don't know whether you found this, but like, you're lucky to be here. Shut up and get on with it,
Yeah, it's really, yes, absolutely. It's really, really, really awful. It's been interesting I've been living in Sydney. On one hand, it feels a little like England, the way women and men are. It's a little more old fashioned. Some of the older men, it just feels like the way they talk to women and the way they are around in the world. But the women are really kind of strong there for some reason. There's a politeness, and children, of course, or it's a little more polite than America usually, at least on the coasts, where kids are just like, what? And they never look you in the eye or say thank you. Or Australia, the kids are kind of still like, say thank you and put that down. But the women are pretty strong, and it's kind of been nice to see. But it's really interesting to see when you really look and see how women behave in a room, in a restaurant, in a house. It's kind of startling. And I don't know, I was a bit out of it to all of that until 20 years ago or 10 years ago when the Riot Girl thing happened or something. I wasn't really paying attention.
You basically went from kind of young teenager to working like an adult, didn't you? In your mid 60s. I think you put it breadwinner and babysitter because you went, you hit the ground running work-wise, and then you met Anthony, and along with all his problems, you were dealing with that as well. So maybe you didn't have the space.
I probably didn't. Yeah, I think that's right. I did not have the space to look at where am I in this? How do I feel? That's something that I personally am looking at even today or yesterday. I was thinking about, I'm staying in my mom's little guest house and just trying to plan doing this tour and having social plans and seeing my mother. And it's just always hard for me to think, what do I need? What do I want? How do I, conserve my energy? And do I just make someone else happy? I don't like the tension of course, with my mother. And it's so funny to be at this time in her guest house while I'm reliving, and I'm so in my teenage years with my mom still, because the book, it's so much about that. and just trying to, oh, I don't want to make her unhappy, but then, well, where am I in this? Like, so it's just that constant figuring out how you are. And that I do think is more common probably for women, I would say, that are thinking, is everyone else okay and happy? But they can't locate, like, I have no idea what I want.
Still now, you still feel like that?
Oh, yeah, in certain situations. Well, yeah, it can be something that I have to think about. And I'm someone who really likes to know why I'm doing something. I'm very authentic in that way. I just don't like to, I don't know what example it would be, but just say I was promoting something, which I don't really do. I mean, hopefully one soon I can have a campaign or something. That'd be nice. But I would really want to know, wait, why am I doing this? Not in a like super duper ethical way, but I personally would like to know, why am I behind this? Is this cheesy even? Is this something that I think is good? I don't know. I'm like, I'm very literal. I need to kind of know. But with people, I get completely thrown still sometimes. Like, I just want everyone, I still have that, like, do you like the restaurant we're going to? I need you to like it.
Where does that come from?
I think the tension, I think having a single mother mostly, she was my primary parent. And for some reason, I think I just felt it was really important for her to be happy. That was felt like, I don't know why that becomes interpreted as survival. Like and she wasn't, she was very sweet and mellow, her personality, but I feel like I was just very sensitive to her feelings, and I just was very clued into them and had a sense that I wanted her to feel good for some reason. I don't know why, because she was very permissive, and she wasn't a strict parent, but I still just was very tapped into her feelings. And I don't know. It's strange that I got that message.
I mean, you didn't meet your father, did you, until Donovan, until you were a week before you were 18? Do you think that, I mean, even asking the question now, I feel a bit stupid because it sounds like you're probably going to go, duh. But do you think that impacted the way you responded to your mum, in terms of you only had the one parent there and you
Yes.
kind of had to keep them happy?
Yes, probably. Probably that makes so much sense. And that's kind of, yeah, that makes so much sense. That if you have one thing you're hanging on to, it just becomes, there's so much pressure on that thing functioning and feeling, good and healthy and happy and things going well. And how are they? Yeah, that makes so much sense. That if you have two, you can kind of feel there's another one if the other one's, and I know being married now, and our 15-year-old still in the house, and we really tag team sometimes when the other one's working or the other one's kind of needs their space, or where it's pretty good. I mean, we really take turns, because it's still, even though she's 15, she's still a child, and we still really need to keep on it with her. But yeah, it was a lot for my mother, I imagine. And yeah, I bet you my brother and I were just like hawkeyes on her, like she's taking care of us. That makes sense.
I mean, your youngest daughter is 15. How much younger is she than you were when you met Anthony?
Yeah, so she's probably yeah, maybe a little less than a year away. It's interesting because when my kids have had friends, and even Goldie, my younger one, once had a little boyfriend who was kind of troubled. There's so much more of a conversation now around, listen, this is not your job. You're not a grown up, you're not a therapist. So often I would say to her, this kid is getting too heavy in these conversations with you, because she would tell me what he was talking about. And I was like, this is for him to say to his parents, or this is for the teachers, or whatever, like all of his troubles. Like, there's a certain extent to what you can help him with and talk to him about. So I think now there's just way more, conversation and like understanding of what kids and young teenagers can handle and what they should be handling, and what's for an adult and professional. Yeah, it's just like there's so much more awareness about all of that stuff. But back then, my mother was worried, and everyone loved Anthony, like and cared for him and was worried for him. Like he's, he's a human being and he's a touching person. And he was clearly having a hard time. And my mother, I'm sure, had seen her fair share of friends in the 60s having hard times. So she cared, but she did not want me anywhere near there. So we were, she was worried about both of us. There was nothing really she could do because I was pretty, strong-minded about doing this for some reason. And I imagine if I read the book in 5 years from now, I'll have even more of an understanding of why I went from kind of just being in high school and having your high school dramas and certain things that were sort of in the ordinary category to something that was that extreme, like taking care of a junkie at that age. Yeah, that was pretty intense because I heard about it. Like I did a movie with Flea and he was like, oh, my best friend's in rehab. And I remember thinking, oh, that sounds kind of exciting. Like I had no idea. Like I knew what rehab was, but I had no idea what that would be like to see up close someone struggling to that extent. Because my mom's friends like smoked pot or like she didn't even drink. She just was like, wasn't like that. So I didn't really understand. And then when I saw it up close, it was so intense. But I don't know why it was almost like a detective. I got like almost intrigued by it and then found myself just like way over my head. And I don't know why I didn't turn around and leave the minute I saw like, the extent of what his addiction. Like, I don't know why I just was like, oh, so sorry, but this is too much. I got completely ensnarled in that dynamic for some reason.
This episode of The Shift is sponsored by Shopify. Is it just me, or does it seem like everyone is either starting a side hustle or becoming their own boss? And you know what they're hearing a lot? It's the sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your own business. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses, big and small, worldwide. Whether you're selling jeans or juice, books or blusher, Shopify simplifies selling online and in person. Covers all your sales channels from a shop-front-ready POS system to its all-in-one e-commerce platform. It even helps you sell across social media like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And it's full of industry-leading tools that give you complete control without having to learn new skills like design or coding. And thanks to award-winning help and with an extensive business course library, Shopify is ready to support your success every step of the way. What's lovely about Shopify is that no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify will be there to empower you with confidence and control to take your business to the next level. It's time to get serious about selling and get Shopify today. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a £1 per month trial period at shopify.co.uk/shift, all lowercase. Go to shopify.co.uk/shift to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.co.uk/shift. Looking back now at the stuff that anyone, we're looking back from your 50s at the stuff that you do in your late teens and your early 20s. Like you were saying earlier, you kind of see so many young women now and they're kind of like, this is what I will do and this is what I won't do. And whether it's at work or home or in their relationships, I certainly feel like I just didn't have that wherewithal at all at that time.
Yeah, I think it was just as bad as the excitement or as bad as the situation was, it was a lot of action and a lot of interest. It was a lot to get involved in. And it was almost like I needed another hobby or something, even though I had started acting, if I had, I don't know, if I was for some reason athletic and I was doing that, or even though I was doing movies, it wasn't like, it wasn't something that my mind was thinking, this is my thing that I'm putting my energy into. So it was a funny time where there's a bit of a void. And if had I had something else like occupying me, even though it was the most negative, difficult few years of my life for my little psyche, I'm happy that I know Anthony and Flea and that scene, but I wish it had been 10 years later and I never dated Anthony. I'm glad I know them, but it was just that scenario. But I think I didn't understand that this interaction, yeah, it was one of those things, even though it was negative, it was something I was attached to because it was like, a big thing that I was involved in.
You talk in the book about basically being a young pretty musician's girlfriend being not really unlike being a Playboy bunny because, you were there to make the guys feel good and not be
Yes.
challenging.
Yeah, they literally had no girlfriends on tour policy at one point. It was a mixed bag because sometimes, like together and joking and having fun, and I felt like an equal. We definitely had deep conversations and talked about, I could give my opinion and talk about what I liked, and it wasn't always like that. Anthony and I had a lot of great deep conversations. I know he valued my mind, but it felt like the girls were backstage and it wasn't like, Guns N' Roses, like I don't know, like a heavy metal chicks or something like where it's very obviously looking like girls in hot clothes. Like everyone was kind of dressed cool and, whatever. Like the girls didn't dress like super duper sexy, but it still felt like the men were the main attraction.
To use your words, in your hunger to live a big life, you'd kind of skipped a chunk of time almost.
When I wrote the book, going over the book so many times, so many edits, so many going over, what's fitting, what's not fitting, all of these things. The chapters I thought I would be the most painful sometimes weren't. For example, when Adam and I broke up, my first husband, it was so hard, and it still is because I miss him as a person in my life. And he was such a safe person and became just this family member to me. And it was just such a great time. And he helped shield me from Hollywood and just hard feelings. Just us being together felt such a protective. I felt like we were these two puppies, like in a basket together, just like we could hide out and be happy together. And it really did work. So the time when we broke up was so hard, but I was alone in New York in an apartment, which is such a luxury now that I look back, if anyone could ever do that in their 20s. And it was this wonderful time in my life because I was finally not chasing things. I was not chasing people. I was just wide open and in my 20s and just what should be doing at that age. So that was kind of like an appropriate age of just kind of dating and searching and writing and painting and listening to music in my own space. And I hadn't had that since I was a little girl in my room, drawing and fantasizing about whatever, like daydreaming. That was another happy time when I was in my own world. I think I just didn't, yeah, I didn't have that because I was just with Anthony and then Adam. And so that was really nice. And I think that dawned on me writing the book. Why do I like this time? I thought this was like the worst time. And it was, I guess, yeah, it was just that's the space I needed. I needed to be doing that at that age. And I could have been doing it the whole time. Sure, if I dated someone for a few years and we happened to stay together, fine. But Anthony was so intense and then marriage.
Yeah, straight into it. When I was reading the book and making notes, I wrote a couple of times, where are you? Because when I do this interview, I try really hard to not mention people's partners because I kind of think this is not, I want to talk about you and what you're doing. But because it felt like maybe it was like you were 30 and then you appear in the book.
Yeah, it's really, it's been frustrating for me also with my career because I had such funny feedback for a long time. I'd go in for a meeting for a film or an audition, and the feedback sometimes was, does she want to do this? She's the cool girl who just happens to be acting, or all of these things. And a friend saying, what do you do all day? And I think I'm a very my nickname as a kid was Space Cadet, and I'm a very dreamy person, which is great because it's made me completely artistic. And I can, writing this book, I could completely go back to how I felt and the details. And I love, painting, and I used to like writing creatively or whatever. I don't really do that as much anymore until this book. But anyway, I think people perceive me as just this floaty person. I kind of want to be seen as somebody who's really here. So I don't know if that was a defense mechanism and it's just like my nature. I'm kind of poetic like that. But yes, probably when I like had a kid, I started coming into myself. And then Ben, my husband now, is he's very good at, I don't know, I think he does help have me be seen by the world, which helps me feel like I am in the world. And I still am working on it in my 50s. Like I once met or worked with Nastasia Kinski, who I love. And I thought she was so incredible because she still seemed like a child as this woman, which is an amazing thing. But I want that. But I know I'm sort of have a childlike thing, which is wonderful to be able to survive a lot of things and still have a childlike quality and insides. But I definitely want to be like substantial and here. But yeah, a lot of the book is how I'm feeling, and I'm chasing things, and I'm looking for something, and I'm loving everyone else. I'm like, everyone else is amazing, and putting everyone on a pedestal. So I've stopped doing that. And that can be kind of painful when you stop putting people on pedestals. But also, thank God, there was a moment when I was talking about Adam, my ex-husband, with my brother, and I was just like, he's just so amazing, and and I miss him. And my brother just said, he's just a guy. And it was like, snapped me out of it, because I realized, oh, right, he's just a man. Because I put people in this light because I think it's just less complex to make things either the best or the worst. Anyway, so it's been kind of a defense mechanism. But yeah, so you felt I'd landed around 30. That's probably right.
Yeah, I felt like even though the first half, the book is about you, no question, but it's about it's all about your interactions with other people. And it felt
Yes.
like that's the point. You come into the front, if you know what I
Yes.
mean.
Yeah.
Which kind of sounds weird because obviously you are the main character in the book the whole way through. And do tell me to sod off.
No, it's true. I mean, one of the hardest parts to write was the epilogue, which is basically the part where you say, where am I now? What have I learned? It's kind of a more like pulling it all together. And I found that really difficult because I didn't want to sound like, this is what I've learned and I have it all figured out. I just didn't want to come across like wanky, like, you just have to do this and whatever. I don't know. I just didn't want it to be tied up in a bow in an annoying way. But it's interesting that I fought that part so much, because that's the part where you're saying, this is me, this is my mind. It's not just me in a story person as a character having all these emotions and looking at others and looking at outward. It's like, this is my mind, what I think. And it's funny that I resisted that part so much. So anyway, I've got to still look at that a little bit.
It's funny you say that though, because I think the epilogue is really good.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, a couple of people were crying, like my friend Karis, who's in the book a lot, and a couple other people. And it's funny that I really have learned be confident in some things that I've been insecure. Like basically the things that think I want to pull back and not go for are often the things that when I do finally just go for it, the response is really good. Like when I started doing a little bit of comedy or doing like stage stuff with my husband and comedians or whatever, always the parts, the bits, my part, I thought, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do well. And then once I did it, that was the part that people responded to the most. So the pulling back is kind of not done me any good, really. I have to like trust to just like, if I have that feeling like holding back, sometimes it's the part that I should like push even harder.
Is it because you think you won't be very good at it and you only want to do it if you're good? Or is it because you don't feel allowed?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think that's exactly both things. One, that have much of an example of doing that, which is an interesting way of being parented and taught in school. I don't think I had many teachers, and my mother is a very permissive kind of not that authoritative parent she didn't have a lot of extracurricular things she was doing. Had I had teachers or parents who kind of pushed me in certain ways to do certain things, I might have it would have been nice having outside adults show me how to do that kind of for myself. So I do think it's like kind of not natural to go for something. But writing this book, I was really, my work ethic is pretty good, but it was incredible. And I had so much confidence for some reason in writing it. But yeah, I think I didn't feel allowed. And also, I've always been someone to throw the race, always. Like in school, if I don't try hard, then it's not my fault when I get an F. Or if I don't learn all my lines for this audition and I don't get the part, well, actually, I didn't learn all my lines, so that's why. So I was really aware of that, especially that's how I became aware was auditioning, because I would notice that if I was really scared or if I didn't really want to do it, I wouldn't work hard on it on the audition. So that was something I had to really be careful about or notice.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a real defense mechanism. Like, I won't put myself out there and then I won't get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, you see kids like who grow up in a tough neighborhood, and it's like, well, obviously there's like a tough walk, but it's also, I think it's something like that as well, like to be too cool. I mean, it sounds like so silly, but that's also defense, like being cool and not trying. Like the kids in school who tried were seen as kind of silly. So I don't know. But now it's nice in the business. It used to be embarrassing back in the 80s and 90s, and you'll know being your English, right? Like
Yeah.
the tall poppy thing.
Oh, yeah.
We used to be so embarrassed unless we were being photographed by Bruce Weber or something. It was like so cheesy. And it was so embarrassing. And now self-promotion is not considered embarrassing. I mean, sure, there's levels to it. Like some people still probably are seen as whatever, pushing too hard. But it's kind of interesting that everyone's like, yeah, get those bags, get the money or whatever. It's like, it's just not as, it's not seen as whatever, shameful or embarrassing as much as it was for our generation.
It's kind of almost compulsory, isn't it? I mean, I know I saw a kind of debate discussion the other day about where people were, I guess, millennials, maybe like Gen Z millennial cusp. They were getting really angry with Gen Xers for basically saying like that, because I feel the same way as you about self-promotion. I feel a bit cringy, a bit embarrassed, a bit pushy. And they're like, well, that's just a luxury you don't have. We don't have that luxury, and they're really like zero tolerance. And it's kind of, I don't know about you, but I was kind of brought up like, trapped in that don't ask, don't get, askers don't get thing. Right. Did you have that when you were growing up? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Yes. Like you got rewarded for being the one that wasn't the one that wasn't needy or something. Like it was a nice quality or something to have too. That was sort of that was a more appealing quality. And sure, yeah, absolutely.
This episode of The Shift is sponsored by our friends at Wild Nutrition, who are offering you 50% off for 3 months. As women, let's face it, we've got a lot on our plates. So good nutrition is key. And this is where quality food-grown supplements can really make a difference. Our bodies are wired to absorb nutrients from food. So I was surprised to find that 95% of the supplement market is synthetically derived. Wild Nutrition believes you deserve better. No synthetic fillers or binders, just food-grown ingredients that are as close to their original food form as possible, scientifically shown to be better absorbed by your body. Founded by one of the UK's leading nutritional therapists, Henrietta Norton, and with an all-women nutritional therapist team, they empower every woman with the nutrients and knowledge to thrive at every stage of her life. Alongside their food-grown women's health range, covering hormonal support, fertility, pregnancy, perimenopause, and postmenopause, they also carry favourites like magnesium and KSM-66 ashwagandha. Their nutritional consultations are free, and I found mine so helpful. It was a total game changer. If only I'd discovered them sooner. I've been taking their energy support, and I can already feel that old lethargy lifting. Wild Nutrition are so confident that you'll see a difference. They're offering the Shift listeners 50% off for 3 months when you visit wildnutrition.com/shift. That's wildnutrition.com/shift. And if you don't feel the benefits within 30 days, they'll give you your money back. T's and C's apply. How has your relationship with acting evolved as you've gotten older?
I have that thing that you hear, and I thankfully have it, where I don't care as much. And meaning like if I make a mistake or if I'm foolish, I can do it again. It's all I can do is prepare as much as I can prepare. And then this is me. I've internalized the character. I've learned my lines. I'm here where I am. And so I'm really great about that. I realize that also a lot of actors fear getting fired or something, or you get these naturally, that's part of it. Like I just did this movie with Jack Black and Paul Rudd, and they're stars and they're really good and they work all the time. And I thought, well, I did one day of work, and what if they saw the dailies and they're like, okay, we got to recast her. You have these natural fears, but it is what it is. Like they liked me and I was great. But I just go for things way more. And you hear that when people get older, why not try? And again, it's that thing of being bigger and going bigger. I don't mean just overacting. I just mean showing up in a bigger way. And I just really want people to realize that I'm not accidentally doing this acting thing. I've been working really hard this whole time. I've been trying really hard this whole time. I've never quit the business. But I think because I had a cool life, and I'm very mellow, people thought I'm just like, going in and out. And sometimes I'm like, great, let them think that. And not that I just wasn't being cast for a long time in different periods of my career. But it wasn't like I was sitting around, at all. Like I really was not. I've been trying this whole time, but I'm not putting that forth. So anyway, I'm trying to telegraph a little more how much I want things. And I do that I'm just like bolder choices these days, because no one's ever said I was usually overacting that wasn't one of my kind of things. I mean, I've done not great jobs at acting at certain points, but so I never have the fear of like overdoing it anyway.
Do you feel like you've got braver?
Yeah, for sure. I'm much braver. Absolutely. And I can hang in. It's been really nice. I feel like I can hang with the big boys, and it's not. Also, as you get older, the business is not the mystery it was, and all of those doors that others can open. It's not. Sure, others can open certain doors, but I can see why. It was sort of mysterious. Like, how did they know how to do it, and why? And now it's like, well, because they did a movie with that other person, and they had a deal there, and so they know each other, and now this is their type of job that they are, pulling together because it makes sense because they wrote that article and they know this. Like now I see the business like connecting the dots.
The strands. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, oh, that makes sense. And before it was like, wait, why didn't I get invited to that big event? Or why, I was just sort of like, it was all just confusing. So anyway, it's nice getting older and understanding how things work in the business. And so that makes me feel like braver and safer and just more kind of, happier, because it's nice to kind of understand things.
Do you think there was a sense in which you were, because Nepo baby wasn't a thing then, but do you think there was a sense in, because your dad was your dad, people were like, oh, she's got a famous dad, but you didn't have the benefit of that because you didn't have the famous dad, if you know what I mean. So you were kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place?
Yeah, it was interesting because I wanted him to be more famous to the generation of my kids, the kids in school, like being in the 70s. I really wanted my friends to know who Donovan was. Like for Karis, the Rolling Stones had just started that tour, and she was on the opposite end where her mom was like sheltering her from anyone knowing because the Stones were really big basically always. But yeah, it didn't really, I think it was I was happy to have that be an intriguing thing, and it seemed to help me just being connected to him. And then it was confusing because it was like, "Oh, that's your dad." But when people would ask me about it early days, I would always say, "Well, I didn't grow up with my dad, but my mom was really great and I had a great childhood." So I did a sort of my own version of what you tell like a politician because I didn't want I was sort of protective of myself. I didn't want people to start prying when I did press. And I wanted to I didn't want to seem sad and like, oh, poor her. You know, how, I didn't want pity. That was the main motivation. So I just said, oh, my father, I didn't grow up with my father. I grew up with my mother and it was great. I just like tied it in a bow. But then people started sort of prying and abandoned by her father. And then that was sort of a drag. But yeah, the Nepo baby thing is interesting. It's gone through different phases where you had these, Jane Fonda, and it was sort of like these legacy families that was sort of like not royalty, but it was sort of like a night, like a kind of great thing. Like Carrie Fisher and her mom, it was sort of like, oh, wow, how interesting, how wonderful. They're all doing things. And it's sort of like a dynastic family thing in Hollywood. And then kind of hard, I think, for Nepo babies. And now it's going through a new thing where parents, because with the other families, they basically didn't really seemingly help their children. And now it's kind of nice where, like with Schitt's Creek or different things, like the parents are developing shows with their kids. I don't know. I think that's kind of nice when that works out in that way. But yeah, it's changing again, the Nepo baby thing. And now it's sort of, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Should they stay back or kind of help them? And then I don't know, it's very interesting. But yeah, with my father, I thought it was like an interesting thing, but then it turned a bit sour when the press were like, wait, you didn't grow up with him?
Yeah, what was your relationship with the press like? I mean, did they just treat you like they treated all young women in the 90s, like patronizing?
I kind of I always liked doing the interviews and I love that kind of attention. I liked I kind of liked having my picture taken back then, and I always liked talking with people, and I loved being a quiet little kid. I liked when people asked me about myself, so I enjoyed it. And then sometimes they would write after was harder than I felt like the conversations were usually not patronizing, but then afterward, sometimes I thought, "Oh, wow, I sound like an idiot." Maybe I did sound like an idiot, but I sometimes felt they leaned into it a little bit. But I don't know. I didn't have such a hard time with the press. Just more that they were a bit head scratching about me, like she doesn't seem to really know what she wants, and I kind of gave a funny impression.
Do you know what you want now?
Yeah, I want the book to do really well. I'm excited to get some more jobs. I imagine I'll get some like work after this naturally, but it was nice to get this movie that was kind of the kind of commercial movie while I was back in Australia during just wrapping up the book. So I'm really in a I'm in a especially good space at the moment again to just to have a good run of working. I mean, of course, I love supporting myself and contributing to the family. But my daughter's 15, my other one's at university, so it's always nice to work hard when I know that it's easier, like the kids aren't little. So yeah, I'm excited to do more acting. I really love when I'm in a painting phase, which I haven't been in a while. So I'm going to go back to Sydney, just be, available for more work. And I just hope that I'm taken seriously more as a contender. Like I think I am. When people get to know me and we start talking about whatever projects, they know that I'm smart and, whatever, that I know I have good taste and ideas and stuff. So if I don't know, I've tried to develop projects before. And I've directed. So I don't know, all of that stuff, I still really like the business. But yeah, I'm excited to get to know Sydney more. I've been there 1 year, and I want to stay in another city enough to get to know it really well and get to feel what it's like living somewhere other than LA or New York. I mean, I know London a bit, but I haven't. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm just gonna keep living in Sydney and see what that's like too.
And how do you think you've changed as you've gotten older? What's being in your 50s like?
I know how to take care of myself emotionally better. Like a lot of people, I get quite anxious, and I'm just better at basically, for I don't know what other word to use, self-soothing. I don't know. It's all these words sound so awful to me, but like, I guess all the things I hoped when you hear, this too shall pass. I always thought, "Ugh, how does that comforting? Because right now I'm in hell. But now I'm starting to kind of get the wisdom that you hear about in certain ways. Like if I have a sleepless night because I'm stressed, I'm like, well, the morning will come and you might be tired, but you'll be fine. Like I'm much better at those kinds of things. And I'm really working on not catastrophizing everything being like, ah. But yeah, I'm just I've always been very analytical, and I've loved therapy and trying to be happy, and I don't know, I don't know, it's all cliche things, like more accepting in a certain way, but also as I get older, there's new things to continually start accepting. The energy level, changes in body, all these things that it's just I'm getting better at accepting things, but also there's new things to accept. But yeah, I kind of it's been a hard few years for everybody, but am on the whole getting kind of happier than I was in my 20s. That might have been my hardest emotional time. But yeah, I think I'm kind of able to I'm really able to appreciate this publicity tour. So I'm kind of enjoying my life, which is really nice. And not kind of when this happens, I'll be happy. I'm really kind of getting more sort of sane. And yeah, I don't know. I really feel like I'm getting a little kind of better and basically taking care of myself emotionally.
So I better ask you the questions that I always ask at the end. What's your emotional age?
32?
Why 32?
I don't know. It popped into my mind. Maybe that's when I was just having my kid, and I probably was the most fulfilled and grounded. Maybe the biggest experience of my life, having my first kids, to something cemented at that age.
Give us a book recommendation. So it can be anything. It can be something good that you've read recently, or it can be something that's been significant through your
I
life.
love Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin that I just read. I had never read James Baldwin, and it was so incredible, Giovanni's Room. And then I just read the Didion and Babbitt's book about Joan Didion and Eve Babbitt.
I forgot to ask you about Eve Babitz because you used to live next door to her, didn't you?
Yeah, that was cool. For a couple years, and then her parents, I lived next. Her parents were there the whole time. Well, her father passed away. Yeah, Eve was there for a few years, and she and my mom are friends. It was really cool. I didn't know till I got a little older that she was this famous writer when I started reading her. I mean, I knew she was a writer, but I didn't know how good.
You didn't know she was Eve Babitz.
No, but she was a real character. But we really liked each other. She was nice. She was great.
What advice would you give younger women?
Advice? Yeah, to think about how they feel and where they are in every situation, to keep working on just being very strong and knowing how they feel, and they have a voice, and they can absolutely listen to how they're feeling and what they need and want.
Who is an older woman who's inspired you?
My mother-in-law is coming to mind for some reason, because it's inspiring to see someone, I guess she's in her mid 80s. She's just very active and very caring and it's inspiring to see someone physically active and involved in so many things. So it's kind of a lesson in just staying kind of involved as you get older with life.
What's your superpower?
That I can understand someone else's point of view, which then helps me actually have more empathy.
Do you think you maybe did too much of that when you were younger?
Well, yeah, in the wrong way. But now, I mean, using that in the right way, I think is, but also my humor and creativity is a superpower.
And last one, how many fucks do you give?
I care a lot still about life in the world and people, but I don't care as much in general about what people think about me, except about this book. I want everyone to love the book. I'm like so obsessed. It's about to come out. But yeah, I give not as many for sure about what people think of me, but I still care a lot about the world.
Have the people in it read it?
Almost half, I would say, but about half have not.
Were you nervous?
Sure. I'm excited and nervous because I'm proud of it, but also I don't want to, if they say you don't know who will be upset about what, I don't want it. I don't know. Though I imagine there will be some surprises, but I'm also excited because I do like it and I'm excited for if, most people have liked it. So I feel excited for people to get, to be happy for me and hopefully get something out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's a really great read. Who do you want to play young Ione?
Not to name drop, but Sophia Coppola is a friend of mine. And she said there's a young actress, an Irish actress who would be good. I should try to remember her name. I have it in an email, but there's a young Irish actress out there that apparently has my vibes and is a good actress.
I can see it. I can definitely see it. So fingers crossed.
It was written kind of like scenes, not totally on purpose to lend itself to a film of some sorts. But as I was reading it, I thought, yeah, I can see this. I don't like to push, it feels cringy to say that this would be a good film because I'm from our generation where we don't see.
Yeah, you're being too Gen X about it.
Too Gen X, but this will be a great movie.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy The Shift and would like to show your appreciation, why not buy me a coffee? Go to www.buymeacoffee.com/The Shift with Sam Baker. You can hear a new episode of The Shift every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, please do rate, review, follow, tell your friends, because it really does help other people find us. And if you'd like to know more about my own experience of shifting, my book, The Shift, How I Lost and Found Myself After 40, and you can too, is out now in paperback.
Unexplored catacombs buried beneath the city. A crumbling castle perched on a mountain peak. A top-secret government bunker. A cursed mansion cloaked in legend. I'm Sasha Auerbach. Join me and Tom Ward every Wednesday and Sunday as we reveal the mysteries and histories of abandoned places around the world and ask, where did everyone go? Brought to you by Like a Shot, makers of Forbidden History. Search for Where Did Everyone Go on your favorite podcast platform.